Hi everyone, I am Brittany, the Cosmic Lunar Soul. Welcome to my channel. If you are new, welcome back to all my subscribers. Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite subjects, sigils. So I wanted this video to be a little different. So it's not going to be about how to create sigils. I will make sure to put all of my favorite videos that cover that topic in the description box. Today is going to be more about how to decide what method of sigil activation to use. So just for anybody who doesn't know, sigils are just a magical symbol used to invoke a specific intention. And there are a million ways, I will say fairly popular ways to craft sigils. And like I said, I'll share those links in the description, but there are a million and one ways to activate and charge your sigils. Or I should say it the other way around. Charge and then activate your sigils. And that's what I want to talk about today. So first and foremost, let's talk about what charging your sigil is. Charging is exactly how it sounds. This is putting your energy or putting an energy into the sigil so that way it has energy to expose out and manifest the intention that you have put into it. So this can be done in a lot of different ways, and sometimes charging and activating can look the same, but it doesn't have to be. So think of charging as being like the battery that goes into the sigil, and then activating it is like turning on the light switch. So if you have a flashlight that is charged with batteries and you put the battery in, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's active. It just means it has the ability to be active. And that's kind of what we're going to talk about today. So like I said, this video is all about deciding how to choose what method to activate your sigil. And I think the best way to think about this is to break up sigils into two categories. You have your active, fast, sort of instant working sigils, and then you have the ones that you want to last for a while, and maybe it won't kick in quite as quickly, or it won't pack as much of a punch up front, but it's something that you want to have around for a while. So for the sake of this video, we'll call the first category temporary sigils. They are the ones that you're not going to have around forever. They're the ones that usually are going to be like very quick acting and just like I said, temporary. And then we have the permanent sigils, and these are the ones that you don't necessarily need to give the kick in the butt to, but you definitely want them to last for a while. So I will, if you stay to the end of the video, give probably my most controversial suggestion, but you have to wait to the end to check that one out. So let's get into charging, and then we'll get into the two parts, the temporary versus permanent sigils. So just to give a quick overview, charging, like I said, is just putting the battery in the flashlight, and you can do that quite a few ways. I'll list some of my favorites, but I recommend just kind of looking around and seeing what kind of methods of charging you like the best, and you can stick with it. And again, like I said, charging and activation can sometimes look the same. So if you want me to talk a little bit more about that in another video, comment below and let me know. One of my all-time favorite methods of charging almost anything in my practice is using the moon. A lot of people who don't work with the moon sometimes like to use the counterpart, the sun, and you're just using, or just a celestial body in general. Some people use the earth as well, and that is your method of charging. And that can look like a lot of different ways. Just set your sigil out under the moon or the sun, or if you're using the earth, you can bury it, or just put a little bit of whatever you have in your home that represents earth to you. Another way, this transitions very cleanly into placing a crystal over it. So sometimes people will put a quartz or selenite or something like that over their sigil in order to charge it up. You can also use bodily fluids. Now this one's probably a little gross for some of you, but bodily fluids are really underrated. So if it's a baneful sigil, for example, you can spit on it, or like say it is a self-love sigil, you could kiss it, that kind of thing. And it's just the act of putting yourself or your energy into the sigil in this case. Another way you can put your own energy into the sigil is to blow on it, and that's a really common thing. But on the flip side, if you don't want to put your energy into it, you can just put it out in the wind. If you're wanting to harness, for example, the chaotic energies of a storm, go outside if it's windy and rainy and just let it hang out there for a little bit and charge it up. Another way you can instill some of your own energy into it is to put it under your pillow, or like just hold it and sit with it and imagine your energy going into it. Putting it under your pillow might be good for a more calming, peaceful type sigil, one that you might want to eventually keep in your room or keep close to you. Same with if you just sit and meditate with it. It might be better for sigils that you plan to keep around you for a longer period of time. And then one of my all-time favorites is to just light a candle over it. I very much love using candles to charge things. I use them for my spell jars and everything else. So you can always light a candle, put the sigil over it, or you could scribe the sigil into the candle. There are a lot of different ways that you can do this. So let's talk about temporary sigils. Temporary sigils, I kind of gave this spiel a little earlier, but they're the ones that you're creating for a one-time use. So this is not to say that you can't reuse the sigil later. It's just you don't expect the sigil to continue to linger around after the energy has been used up. A lot of times this can look like a sigil that you're creating for a specific job interview you're attending, for example. Maybe you applied for a specific school that you want to get into, and you create a sigil that says, I have successfully gotten accepted into school X, right? So once you get the acceptance letter, you obviously don't need that sigil anymore. So it is a temporary sigil. A lot of times this can look like protection sigils that are being used for temporary dwellings. So if you're in a hotel room, if you're traveling, you can say, I am protected while I am traveling on vacation, you know, something like that. So what are some beneficial ways that you can activate a sigil that you don't really need to last you that long? One of my favorite ways actually is to just write out or draw out the sigil on a piece of paper or something like that and tear it up. If it is, say, a sigil that it has, say it's something you're trying to remove from your life, like a bad habit, rip it up and then let it blow away in the wind. Obviously, use biodegradable products if you're going to be doing that. One of my favorites, because I already mentioned that I like to use candles, is to burn it. So if I am creating a temporary sigil, I will draw it out, put it under the candle, let it burn down and charge up. And then I will, before the candle completely burns out, I will light the sigil on fire and let that burn out, and then let the candle continue to burn out, and that will be considered charged and activated. If you charge your sigils under the moon or the sun or whatever, you can kind of complete the process by letting it dissolve in the moon water or sun water or whatever, you know. So if you are one to charge your sigils under the moon or the sun or whatever celestial body, you can actually dissolve it in that same water. So you can dissolve it in moon water, you can dissolve it in sun water, whatever celestial body that you are using to charge it, and it's like kind of completing the cycle. So I really enjoy doing that sometimes, depending what I'm doing. A lot of the ones that are temporary, it's really common for them to be activated using destructive methods. So if you've heard me already, I've described ripping it up, burning it, dissolving it. So these are things that I like to use for ones that I am removing from my life, or I just something where I'm saying I am putting this into the universe now. So the last one is actually a charging and activation method that I mentioned earlier, and you can carve a sigil into your candle. So as it burns down, that energy is being released into that sigil, but then it also burns down. You'll have to let me know if there are any other temporary sigil activation methods that I didn't mention that you think would be good. Comment below and give me some ideas. You guys always have the best ideas. Now, permanent sigils are the opposite, obviously, permanent versus temporary, right? You're like, Brittany, we already know what words mean. But just to describe it to you, permanent sigils are something that you want to last for a very, very long time or forever. So just because it's lasting for a long time doesn't necessarily mean you want it to last forever. A good example of this is if you are moving into a dorm room. You are going to be in there for quite a while. sometimes 6 months to a year, depending how your school is set up. But at the end of that, you might move on to a new place. So you want it to last for that duration of time, but you don't need it to be permanent. So when I say permanent, I just mean long period of time or transitioning into the possibility of permanence. So another example could be if you have a lease, a car lease. You want to protect your car for the duration of the lease, but you don't need it to last forever, because once you turn that car in, you're going to transition that protection to another car. Now, that being said, it doesn't necessarily mean that the sigil itself is not a permanent sigil. You could just be transitioning it from place to place, if that makes sense. So there's different variations of permanent. Just find out what permanent means to you, and let's talk about some activation methods. For the temporary sigils, we talked about destructive methods, but for permanent, we're going to look at the less destructive, either less destructive or non-destructive. The first one is probably one of my favorites. I do this often, and this is kind of why I have a grimoire of just sigils, and it's to draw it over and over again. And that could look like a few things. You can have a piece of petition paper that you just scribble the sigil on over and over until the whole thing is filled up. It could just be drawing the sigil in multiple places. So for instance, if you have a car, you can use moonwood or something like that. You could just use your finger as a wand. You can use your wand, whatever that looks like to you, and draw it on all 4 windows. Draw it on the windshield, draw it on the back shield. I don't know what that's called. The rear view window. So another way is kind of a combo of charging and activating, and that is just to keep the sigil on you. And what that will look like, and this is great for personal protections, personal wards. If you carry it with you, you're constantly imbuing the sigil with your energy, and in turn, it is constantly working for you. It's kind of like think of it as like a solar powered device, right? So as long as something is getting constant sun source, it can run, forever. Can't run forever because perpetual motion doesn't exist, but whatever. This one is similar to carving it into a candle, but the idea is to actually carve it into something permanent. So if you own your home, maybe you carve it into one of the bricks in your home. Or if you don't necessarily own your home, but you have something that you can take with you, like a door sign or something like that. You can carve it into a corner on the door sign. Things like that. And then the energy of you being in your home, you can count that as charging, or you can take that thing, put it under the moon or the sun. You can spray moon water on it. However you like to charge your sigils, that is how you can continuously charge that permanent sigil. Another popular one, I don't do this because I don't really enjoy sewing, but you can sew onto clothes, or maybe if you have an awesome friend like mine who can embroider literally anything onto anything, then you can embroider your sigils onto your clothes. And if you can do this yourself, it's much more beneficial because you can charge it as you are embroidering it. If you are like me and prefer to outsource that, then when you get the piece of clothing, you can just charge the entire thing, like I mentioned before, with the different charging methods. This is a really popular one. I don't think I've ever done it, but you can turn your sigil into jewelry. And that can look like a lot of different things. If you have lockets, you can put a piece of paper that has your sigil drawn on it in your locket, or if you have like little spell jars around your neck, that kind of thing. If you happen to be really good at like crafting jewelry, you can literally just craft your sigil. I'm sure you guys have been wondering, what is this controversial suggestion? And you guys will have to let me know how controversial it is. I know there's a stigma about sharing, but the last suggestion I have is to share it. So this is coming from the idea that sharing something or more people using this one thing gives it power. A lot of people use this concept when talking about deities and stuff like that. So the idea that more people are accepting or using or thinking of this thing means that it becomes more powerful. So you don't have to rely on just yourself to charge the sigil. You don't have to worry about using moon water or using the sun and finding ways to do this. So the sigil is always in a perpetual state of charging and activating, and all you have to do is use it at that point. And I do this a lot with sigils that I give out when people purchase things from my shop, and it's my idea that the more that I hand this out, the more that people think about those sigils, the powerful they become, the more powerful they become. So you'll have to let me know, do you guys share your sigils at all? Do you have specific sigils that you do share versus others that you don't? Because I know I do, and if you're curious about that, I can turn that into a video. Let me know in the comments below, and yeah, if you enjoyed this video, make sure you like, subscribe, hit that notification bell so you don't miss out on future videos. All right, bye guys.